Hello and welcome to episode 19 of this Inspired by 2020 Visionary Chat Series. I'm delighted to be joined today by none other than Chester Elton. Chester, how are you?
Delighted to be here, as you well know.
No, absolutely. We've tried to talk a couple of times, and you've gone beyond the call of duty to get on this today. So it's really cool. And so you're partner and founder of the Culture Works, helping leaders create high-performing, all-in cultures. You're a #1 New York Times, USA Today, Wall Street Journal best-selling author. You've written, I think, 12 books. The four that I can remember are All In, The Carrot Principle, The Best Team Wins, and the most recent one, which we're going to talk about, is Leading with Gratitude. And I know Marshall Goldsmith was an inspiration in early discussions around that. You're also an executive coach, you're a mentor, you're a keynote speaker, and I think you're on two, not just one, but two lists in globalgurus.org. You're #4 top leading leadership expert and #2 top organizational culture expert. So it's a real privilege to talk to you. And, I could speak for hours about all this stuff because your energy, I always feel your energy, and so maybe in the first 5 minutes, just talk a little bit about you and your background and how you got to where you are today. The one thing I forgot to say was your biggest achievement is you have 4 children and 2 grandchildren. And with that, over to you.
That's right. And not just children, grandchildren, extraordinary, exceptional, beautiful, and smart children and grandchildren.
Wonderful.
So thank you for that, Simon. Yes, it's been a wonderful journey. My co-author, Adrian Goski, and I, for 20-odd years now, have been studying workplace culture, leadership, teams, and this thread of gratitude that has been so interesting to us and how powerful it is to create great cultures, great teams. And every extraordinary business leader that we studied, it was a big part of how they led. Well, a little bit back when I grew up in Canada, I've lived in the States for a long time now, happily married for 37 years to the extraordinary Heidi Elton. And we live just outside New York City now and have in New Jersey for some time, which has allowed us access to a lot of remarkable organizations and companies in the New York area, Washington, Boston, Philadelphia, and so on. And I'll tell you what's been really gratifying, Simon, is as our work has developed, we've realized that, and this is borne out in our research, which, by the way, we have over 1 million engagement surveys we draw from 80,000 of our own motivators assessment, is that when you are happy and engaged at work, you are 150% more likely to be happy and engaged in your personal lives. So our mission really is to help leaders engage, enable, and energize their people to create these wonderful, productive, safe places to work so that ripple effect to their families and their communities can continue. And hopefully that's enough. About me.
No, that's great. And it really resonates with me because the work that I do, I'm described as the growth strategist, and it's a fancy title. But basically what I do is I help organizations through coaching, consulting, training, mentoring, grow in 4 different ways, okay? And so business growth, leadership growth, brand growth, so that's corporate and personal brand, and mindset growth. And it's very ambitious. But the reason I do that is, that you have a lot of coaches and consultants who focus on 1 or maybe 2 of those. But for me, all 4 of those are inextricably linked. If you're not looking after your employees, so this is personal growth, then they're not really going to really fully effectively affect the bottom line of the business growth and vice versa. So it's all inextricably linked. So, you can't really build a business. You can't build a business without people. So having happy people feeds back into the personal lives, but also comes back into the business. So, that resonates fully. And so in terms of the latest book, Leading with Gratitude, maybe just describe, and I don't know whether you have a copy there to show the audience.
Absolutely. I'd never leave home without it. My publisher would really be upset if I did.
Yeah. So maybe just describe it and maybe mention Adrian as well and how that relationship has developed, because I know you've written a number of books and describe the premise of the book.
Yeah, this was our mutual friend, Marshall Goldsmith, actually had written a collaborative book with the MG100 leadership group, of which Adrian and I are both members, called Work is Love Made Visible. And it was a series of essays, and he called me, and we've become dear friends over the last few years. He said, look, could you promote this book on LinkedIn? You have a huge following. And I said, absolutely. sent me a book, and I read, and it was kind of fun because I knew a lot of the contributors.
Yeah.
So he called me, he says, what do you think of the book? I said, oh, I love the book. I love that I knew the contributors. I love the message, and so on and so on. I said, I'm surprised, though, that there wasn't an essay on gratitude.
Yeah.
Because it's so much a part of what you do. As you know, Marshall, it's always feed forward, thank people for their feed forward, and move on. Don't hold a grudge, no obligation, no guilt. I mean, if you know Marshall, these are triggers, as he would say, as part of his coaching. And he said, you know what, you're right. That's a miss. He says, well, look, you're the apostle of appreciation. I'm the world's greatest executive coach. Adrian Gostick is one of the great business writers of our age.
Yeah.
Let's write a book on gratitude.
Wow.
So we laughed and we said, like, are you serious? Because it would be wonderful to have a project with you. Yeah. Absolutely. So we started having all the meetings, getting more and more excited. He goes, he says, look, I can't be the lead author. We were going to do, Goldsmith with Gostick.
Yeah.
He says, I've got a project. My agent doesn't think it's a good. I can be a sub-author.
Yeah. So
Gostick and Elton with Marshall Goldsmith, not a problem. So we shipped it out to all the publishing houses, and they were getting excited. We were getting excited. He goes, he says, look, I got this book. I feel horrible. We've done all this work. And we said, well, it would have been good to know like 3 or 4 weeks before we pitched it.
Yeah.
And yet said, look, Marshall, if it's a great concept, the publishers will buy it.
Yeah. If
not, no harm, no foul. And he was so funny. He said, you guys are great. And I said, Marshall, it's a book about gratitude. Like, what did you think we were going to say?
Yeah.
Well, end of the story is HarperCollins Business bought the book.
Yeah.
We distributed it in March. It's gone on to great acclaim. It's on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. We love the message, and little did we know that COVID was going to hit. That we'd have all this civil unrest. Yeah. And that this expression of simple gratitude, whether it's to your neighbors, your employees, your family, is more important now probably than ever.
I agree, and and that's a wonderful story. And it's funny. I had a similar story with Marshall when I was launching my recent book, How to Be a Better Deal Closer, at the beginning of last year. He had agreed to come over to Ireland to help me launch it at Trinity College, and very similar actually. I hope he doesn't mind me talking about this. And he's fine. And it was all set in. I told everybody, and it was great. And then I had a message from his team saying, awfully sorry, can't do it. I've been committed to do something else in Ireland at the same time. So I'd let it go. But Marshall was so, I have huge gratitude. So I'd let it go and I'd line somebody else to do the launch. And on the very evening of the launch, at about 6 o'clock, I got a phone call, and it was a San Diego number on my phone. And I thought, that's very strange. But I picked it up. It was Marshall. And he said, this is true. I've arrived in Dublin. Where is your book launch? I'm coming to it. So it was a phenomenal thing, That's Marshall.
Yeah, and so gracious, and has been such a great mentor and a coach for me because of things like that. He always deals from, he assumes positive intent in everyone. He just gives, and he doesn't keep score.
No, I agree. And it's amazing. Like, this whole area of gratitude. I mean, he's probably the biggest example for me. I mean, he's, done a couple of my books, and he's done a video testimonial. And sometimes I think, I've thought over these 4 years, why is he doing this for me? Okay. And I had dinner with him last January, and we had a great discussion. And I don't need to ask that question anymore. All I do now is I do my best to carry it forward as well. So I mentor people over here, and I have to say I'm going beyond what I used to do in terms of helping them, and that's what it's all about. It's that sense of gratitude and passing it along. And I'm also in a wellness spiritual program. I have been for 14 years. And the premise of that is gratitude, It's all about gratitude, and every day is a lifetime. Chester, every day is a lifetime, and we should be grateful for what we have. And so how does that feed back into the leadership of organizations, do you think? I mean, I haven't read the book, and I want to read the book. So do you talk about the fact that there isn't enough gratitude, and that the organizations need to look at this more? How do you look at this within the book?
Well, wonderful question. And by the way, for the listeners, we have a wonderful book website called leadingwithgratitudebook.com. You can download the foreword, which was written by our good friend Marshall, and the first chapter, as well as there's podcasts, there are articles, and wonderful little videos to give you a sampling. We really started from the premise that there was a gratitude gap. in business, there's a gratitude gap.
Yeah.
We surveyed leaders and said, do you think you're above average in giving appreciation, recognition, gratitude to your people?
Yeah.
Around 70% said, yes, I believe I am. Only 23% of their employees agreed. So there's a definite gap there, right?
Yeah.
And then we very quickly debunked 7 of the most common myths as to why leaders don't. Most leaders will agree that it's important to appreciate and value, and simple expressions of gratitude are important to your culture. There are all these excuses that, well, people need too much of it, or if I had more time, or if I had a budget, or isn't it really just all about compensation? And so we knock those down very quickly. Again, our database of over 1 million engagement surveys gives us a lot of credibility in this space. And then what we did is we interviewed some remarkable leaders. Alan Mulally, who saved the Ford Motor Company in the last recession. Gary Ridge, who should be more famous than he is. He's the CEO of WD-40, and he's created an incredible culture with remarkable results. Ken Chenault, the recently retired CEO of American Express, along with Hubert Joly, to name a few. And we looked at 8 best practices, and we said, look, there is seeing what needs to be recognized and for which we are grateful, and then expressing. And that really is the roadmap. And then the last section, which is wonderful, is our baker's dozen. How do you take it home? To your point, that total person, that well-being. And to a person, those extraordinary leaders that we interviewed, yes, they practiced it deeply in their organizations. They all took it home, which we found quite lovely.
It's amazing, I mean, I've had a 26-year career. In the first, I started life as a corporate lawyer, and I was lucky enough to be the first legal counsel for Dell over here in Ireland for the Home Small Business Division. And I was also head of legal for Europe, Middle East, and Africa for another US multinational, amazing company called Xilinx, Xilinx. And in both of those companies, we had inspirational leaders. I mean, Michael Dell was a real inspirational. I mean, he was really wrapped up with the whole persona of Dell, and people felt motivated by him, right? And then the other one was an amazing guy called Wim Relance, who was a big Belgian guy, and he was the CEO of Xilinx, and he lived in California, worked on the campus in San Jose, and was just lacking in arrogance. So this guy was, highly acclaimed in the high-end silicon, configurable programmable logic market. This is the top-end microchips. And yet he didn't have a corner desk, an office. He would rotate his office around the campus, and sit with members of staff. And the reason I mention those two is that I've been privileged to have great jobs, but the thing I remember most are those leaders who touched our personas, who really touched our souls, and I think that's, a lot of people leave jobs, not because they're not getting paid enough, it's because they feel ignored, or they feel, they're not getting enough praise, or they're not receiving the gratitude. Did that come out in your work as well, that people hate being ignored?
Well, no question, and those have been numbers that we've lived with for years. Engagement levels globally are dismal. Only 15% globally, around 30%, almost a third in the U.S. And so it really is, when you think of lost productivity, innovation, engagement, and so on. And you're exactly right. People don't leave logos; they leave their immediate supervisor. They leave their leader, because they don't feel their voices heard. They don't feel like they matter. We talk about high engaged cultures, or I believe what I do matters. I make a difference. And when I make a difference, somebody noticed it and celebrated. Somebody literally said, thank you. And it doesn't seem like that's a lot to ask.
No, I know.
And yet, it's, we call it common sense uncommonly practiced. So we really did lay out in the book the roadmap. And I will touch on a few things here today. If you really do want to achieve extraordinary results, attract and retain top talent, people have to feel valued. And nothing makes them feel valued better than simple expressions of gratitude. So it's been, I hate the pun, but very gratifying work.
Absolutely. I get that. And so in terms of, you talk about all-in cultures, your book All In, I mean, is that a similar premise to what we're talking about here, or is it slightly different?
Well, in All In, we really talked about how to engage, enable, and energize. Engagement, we talk about a lot, but have you enabled your people, the training, the tools, the wherewithal to deliver on the promise?
Yeah.
And then to your point, the energy, the why of what we do. Now, in that particular roadmap, cheering for each other was very important. So there was always an element. Our book, The Carrot Principle, was really specifically about recognition. Gratitude to me is really the carrot principle 2.0.
Yeah.
It goes from the tangible, which I think is important, the plaques, the ceremonies, and so on, to the relationship, the emotional engagement.
Yeah.
And that's what you get with gratitude. You talk about mental wellness. I honestly believe that gratitude can heal people. It heals them emotionally.
Oh, absolutely. As I said, I've been on a program, and there was a period of time that I would be doing a daily gratitude list. So I would do it in the morning and I would do it at night. And initially I didn't like doing it. I thought, this is so contrived. This is just something out of the textbook. But it really focuses your mind and also your consciousness when every morning you wake up, right? And you write 5 things that you're grateful for. Simple things like, I'm so grateful that I woke up in a warm, dry bed. I'm so grateful that my wife is next to me. I'm so grateful that I can get a lovely cup of coffee. And at the end of the day, I'm so grateful that, I have a wonderful family and that the weather's been beautiful. And if you start thinking like that, I do a lot of work around mindset and mindfulness, and you become what you think, right? So if you're thinking gratitude, you become grateful. It's common sense. If you're thinking angst and anger and resentment, you become that way. Did that come out as well in your work?
Well, it's really interesting. We talk about tools that you can use, and a gratitude journal is really important. A journal, I think, is important. It causes you to reflect. What did I set out to do today? What happened? What did I learn? What will I take forward? Yeah. Well, my wife and I have a gratitude practice at the end of the day. We say, what are your 3?
Yeah.
And then I start the day, I write down 3 to 5 things. Yeah. Studies have proved that people that focus on gratitude have lower blood pressure, sleep better, have deeper relationships. Yeah. And it sounds like that is a big jump from a simple exercise. To your point, it's the intentionality and the discipline.
It is.
At first, it is. You just do it to check the box. It's what you do. Yeah. The more you do, it becomes who you are. You develop that. And the executives that I coach, I have them all keep gratitude journals.
Yeah.
As well. One of the areas around seeing that I love, that I want to share with your listeners, because I know we'll run out of time, is this idea of assuming positive intent. The best leaders that we studied, whether it was Alan Mulally that said, hey, people are showing up and want to do a good job.
Yeah.
Hubert Joly said, I may be naive. Now, he took Best Buy from $1 billion deficit to $1 billion surplus. These are guys listen to, right? And he said, I just assume that people come to work wanting to do a good job.
Yeah.
And in trying to do a good job, they make mistakes, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's safe to make mistakes. Now, what I love about that is translating it into how you manage in a crisis, how you manage in COVID, how you manage in civil unrest, how you manage a household where now you're video chatting with teachers and you're trying to do everything with your commute is you open the door, right? This idea that we assume positive intent about people, we are grateful for what they can do.
Yeah.
We're a little more kind. And more than anything, I think it brings patience into the equation. I'm just going to be more patient. It doesn't. You don't have to respond within 30 seconds of every text or email or Slack, message that I send you.
Yeah.
And that was, Amy Edmondson from Harvard endorsed our book, and she talks a lot about psychological safety. And when you are grateful for people, when you're a little more patient with people, when you're a little more kind, it creates that safety. It reduces anxiety and stress and allows people to be their best selves. Your better angels come out. And that best practice around assuming positive intent was a wonderful message that I was just so delighted to share with you.
That's wonderful. I mean, everything you've just said in those last 3 minutes, it underpins the direction that my career and my work is going. So, I have my LinkedIn CV profile, which is great. But also I've been on my own journey in life of trauma and recovery, right? And I'm starting to tell that story this year in a non-egotistical way, because everybody's been through trauma in their life. And And one of the things I've learned, really strongest thing, is that, and I'm not making this up, it's well known from Buddhist philosophy, but sanity is in that gap between the stimulus, what happens to you, and how you respond. So if something happens, as you've just said, when something happens, you just take that time to reflect before responding, and that takes a bit of common sense and a bit of self-awareness. And the other thing then you said was about, positive mindset. I posted yesterday, it was Father's Day here and Midsummer's Day at the same day. And I go for a walk with really a group of 8 men, right, on a Sunday morning along the seaside here in Dublin. And the sky was very gray and very cloudy. And I took this beautiful photo, and rumbustious dark clouds, but the sun was shining through, and the water was white with light. And so I posted on LinkedIn, perception comes from our mindset, right? And, if you have a positive mindset, then you'll feel positive and people around you will. And so I said, here's to the positive fathers on Father's Day. And it's had an amazing reaction, and I never used to, I was the most cynical, capitalist, corporate guy. Even 10 years ago, I would never have dreamt of posting things like that. But a lot of the time I was miserable. I was one of those executives, but I was miserable. So in terms of, in the final 5 minutes, in terms of how do you think the whole coaching discipline is going to be affected by the fact that we're going to be working a lot more online, I think. I think a lot of these remote conversations, and it's interesting, in some respects, it's better because you're focusing on each other. But of course, we're human, so we need to be together. How do you think coaching might be affected or might change as a result of what's happening to the world right now?
It's interesting. I coach a lot of people internationally. We do it over Zoom or video chat, whatever the platform is already. What I do miss is generally when you kick off a coaching engagement, you would be able to meet someone. There's only so much you can do over video, right? When you're having a cup of coffee or you're having a meal, there are a lot of things that happen just in that interpersonal space. Yeah. So that will be lacking somewhat, although I don't think much of it will change because the messaging, the discipline, the conversations are still going to be, I think, very deep. If anything, I think as people get more comfortable with video platforms, is they won't hesitate to coach someone, in Moscow or Dublin or Paris. The only thing you have to deal with is the time change and make sure you've got a good Wi-Fi connection.
I know. There was a day last week, I think it was. Yeah, I spent the day. I did a session with somebody in New Zealand. I did a coaching session. I did a webinar with somebody in Australia. I had a great conversation with somebody in India, and spoke to somebody in the States and Ireland in one day.
Yeah. So I think that is going to be, more and more common. I think people are going to be very hesitant to travel long distances.
I think so.
For quite some time until there is a vaccine, and in fact, it becomes more like the flu. We found ways to mitigate. Right now, it's still scary, and so I think coaching more than ever is going to be needed. As you well know, having a coach years ago meant that you were on your way out the door. Yeah, it was sort of the last task to save your career. And now, I love the conversation. The executives I'll talk to, I'll say, are you a sports fan? And they'll say, sure. I say, well, who's your favorite, athlete? And somebody might say Serena Williams or, Michael Jordan or whatever it might be. And I said, great. I said, I'm a big Roger Federer fan. So one guy said Roger Federer. I said, great. One of the greats of all time, if not the greatest. Did he have a coach? I said, well, yeah, sure. I said, actually, do you think he had more than one coach? Well, I probably had a nutrition coach, a strength coach, a hitting coach, a strategy coach. I said, that's right. So do you want to be a world-class executive? I said, oh, absolutely. I said, well, do you have a coach? And they go, no.
That sums it up. So Chester, for you, before I come on to the final question, what's next for you? I mean, you must be thinking about doing so many different things. I mean, how do you discipline yourself to determine what's the next thing you do? What's next for you?
We really are really deeply engrossed in leading with gratitude. And I think there's a tremendous mission there, to create kinder, more patient and more productive workplaces.
Yeah.
We're also working right now on a project around anxiety in the workplace. It never more has there been more anxiety, and particularly with the generations coming in. Gen Z, Gen Z, depending where we are in the country or the world, and millennials talk a lot about anxiety. And it's not something that the baby boomer generation ever talked about. It was not.
I know.
It was clearly a sign of weakness, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of work to be done there, and we've embedded, started that project.
Okay.
The last thing too really is we're talking a lot about online training.
Yeah.
And getting that done, and making sure that we can do that. So I'm in the vestibule of the library. Somebody just dropped off some books. So that was that.
That's good. That's good. This is real time.
Yeah. And so, you asked, what are we passionate about? We're still very passionate about leadership, workplace, and gratitude. Yeah. How does that create a place where people believe what they do matters? They make a difference. And when they make a difference, they're noticed and celebrated. And it's that safe place where you can talk about anxiety. You can talk about personal issues. And it doesn't become something that's in your employment jacket that everyone's embarrassed about. Right?
Perfect. And so just to finalize, if you were going to whisper 2 or 3 words of wisdom into the ears of maybe a 19 or 20-year-old who wants to be a corporate leader in the future, what words of 2 or 3 wisdom would you give them to set them up for success?
I'd whisper in their ear, be grateful. Be grateful for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have.
Yeah.
Secondly, be kind. Kindness is underrated. Be kind to people. My father used to say, be good to everybody. Everybody's having a tough day.
Yeah.
He talked to the parking lot attendant the same as he did the captains in ministry. So be grateful, be kind. And you know what? Be patient. There's no such thing, unless the building is literally on fire.
Yeah.
You can wait, So be grateful, be kind, be patient. Those are the words I would whisper.
That's perfect. So Chester, how do people find out about you and your work and potentially connect with you? What's the best way to find out?
LinkedIn is a great place. We've got wonderful followership there. We've got our LinkedIn Live show, which is Leading with Gratitude Live. We have a monthly newsletter on LinkedIn called The Gratitude Journal. You can find us at thecultureworks.com. It's our training company, chesterelton.com. And you know what? I would really highly recommend you go to leadingwithgratitudebook.com. We have a lot of free downloads. Our mission is to make your workplace better. And by doing that, make your life a little better. And if we can accomplish that for a couple of people every day, you know what? That's a life well lived. That's
perfect. That's really powerful. Chester, it's been great chatting with you, and thanks for moving away from where we were before and being in the vestibule of the library. Thanks so much. I'm very grateful.
I am too. Listen, you can call me anytime. Let's keep the conversation going.
Likewise.
Cheers.
Take care. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.